I wasn't sure what to expect when I started Scars Above. I'm not really huge into sci-fi games, but this one did look vaguely interesting, so I figured I'd give it a shot, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this game. It is a good, solid, third-person sci-fi adventure game, which is exactly what it describes itself as. It never tries to oversell you on the premise. It never tries to go above its scope. It's just a good, dependable game. It puts you in the shoes of a competent female lead, gives you an alien world to explore, and says have at it, with some pretty interesting puzzles and element-related combat. The story is interesting. It's not going to blow you away, but it is a good, dependable story that has a decent pace and some interesting moments in a very, very well-designed world. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, but I did find the planet that you were exploring interesting and very well designed. The world building is cool. The environments are cool. I would say they are the standout to the game for me. I'm a sucker for world design and world building, and a good art style and environment design often will pull me in even if the rest of the game is lacking. So I'm happy to say that this game looks really cool. The characters are well written and well acted, which is also a bonus. A lot of these games, they kind of fall flat when it comes to the acting or the performances, but the cast did a solid job in this game. The gameplay is a fun loop of exploring and combat and some light puzzle work. It's not enough to drive you absolutely mad. I suck at puzzles, but I found the puzzles here to be entertaining but not infuriating. The weapons and abilities you find along the way are quite fun and interesting too. Like I said before, it has elemental style combat where you have to defeat certain enemies with certain types of elements and do bonus damage with elements in different situations. Like if you're in water, you can electrify the water and it does extra bonus damage. Or you can set fire to oil or explosive pods. The boss fights were actually varied and interesting, which I found kind of refreshing. One of them was quite a interesting one to figure out. I won't spoil it for you, but it does involve a little bit more than just shooting and circle strafing, which is actually something that a lot of games fall back on. I'm glad to say that Scars Above actually has a little bit of variety in there for the boss fights. And I'm happy to report that the game actually has a satisfying ending. A lot of these games really stumble at the end and just leave you hanging. This one has an actual ending. I found it to be quite satisfying. Overall, I think it's just good sci-fi. As for negatives of the game, I gave the environments and the world building a plus. I'm going to give the character models a solid C. I found them to be the only lacking part visually. I didn't think they held up visually as well as the rest of the game. The lip syncing was all over the place. For me, it's really hard to be immersed in a game if the lip syncing is off, and it was the one thing about this game that really pulled me out. I know it's hard to pull off really good lip syncing for characters and character models, but a lot of games manage to get by if it's okay. This one I found it was a bit lacking. The animations are also a bit stiff and robotic. They weren't terrible, it was just a bit robotic. And after playing so many games with great animations, ones where they're just kind of cookie cutter, it does stand out. The enemy variety was a bit lacking. Once you've got to about halfway through the game, you've pretty much seen most of the enemy types. There are different variants of those enemy types, but a lot of them do play the same. So I did find that the combat did start to get a bit stale after a while. The upgrades for the guns and for the character kind of felt like they were placed in after the game was finished, because a lot of them are really weirdly placed, and some of them are really close to each other, some are spread out. It's kind of like they ran out of place to put them. The game has respawning enemies after resting at a checkpoint, kind of like a Dark Souls thing, which I found was kind of arbitrary. I didn't think it was really necessary to have respawning enemies. It never benefited the game. For me, it just made it more frustrating when I died to have to fight a whole bunch of enemies over again just to get back to where I was. The game really isn't a Souls-like, so putting this system in there just kind of felt a bit unnecessary. Same for the skill upgrades. The game has a whole upgrade tree and you collect experience along the way to level up. I found that this was helpful, the skills did help out in boss fights and stuff, but at the same time, I just felt like it was in there because it had to be. Otherwise, they felt like players might get bored if you were just exploring the environment without anything to collect. Other than that, really good game. Highly recommend it. Goes on sale a lot for really cheap. Got a lot of good reviews, so don't just take my word for it. Scars Above, thumbs up. Up next, we have Tales of Iron. This is a game that really clicked for me. I really enjoyed this game. I'd heard some mixed reviews about it for various reasons, but for me, this was everything I love in a game. It has amazing visuals and an art style that just really grabbed me. This is an art style that I could play a million games with. The hand-drawn art style with the cartoony aspects, I eat this shit up. It was great. I had me fully hooked and entertained from minute 1 till right when I finished the game. Tales of Iron is a 2D action RPG with Souls-like elements where you play as a rat trying to kill a bunch of toads that have invaded your empire. The story is really simple, but it keeps you motivated throughout the whole game. You kind of build up your kingdom after it's been destroyed by toads. It's got like a full gear system with different armor sets and really fun combat. A lot of people found the combat to be really simple, but for me it was really challenging when it wanted to be and really satisfying all of the time. It's brutal and very bloody. You hack a lot of toads to death, and there's a lot of other enemy types in the game that are really satisfying to beat. The bosses were challenging to the point where it felt really satisfying to beat them. The world design is really, really good. Like I said before, I'm a sucker for really good world design and environmental design. And this game has so much of that. It oozes style like all over the place. The map is varied with a lot of locations that you go back and forth, exploring all the different nooks and crannies to find hidden areas and doing quests. The sound design and music was really, really good throughout the entire game. It was very consistently amazing. The game is narrated by the voice actor for Geralt from the Witcher series, which I just found to be a cherry on top. That was just great.
Side by side, the pair had fought frog scum together many times. Could Reggie live up to his father? Eivor was here to find out.
And overall, like, I don't have a lot of negatives to say about this game. If I had to give it some nitpicks, I would say I'm not a fan of the way that they handle the talking in the game. Like, the rats and the characters don't talk. They kind of just squeak with really high-pitched sounds, which I guess makes sense because they're rats. But at the same time, I found those noises to be really grating on my eardrums. I'm not a fan of games where you replace the audio with really high-pitched sounds. The story isn't anything too crazy, so don't go in there expecting like Game of Thrones or anything like that. It's just a straight, simple story that you follow through to the end. And there is a decent amount of grinding behind some of the story progression. So there are moments in the story where you have to grind to complete quests to continue through the story. Some people weren't a huge fan of that. I found it to be not that big of a deal, really, because it just meant more going out in the world, more combat, and more exploring, which I really enjoyed in this game. The controls can also take a little bit of getting used to, but I use a controller and it only took me a little bit to get used to it. So if I can do it and I suck at these kind of games, anyone can do it. Other than that, great game. I had so much fun playing this one, and I'm really looking forward to the sequel. Rounding out the games for this month, we have Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I mentioned last month that I might be finishing this one up, and I decided I'd just get it done. I really enjoyed this game. I know a lot of people don't rate it as highly as some games in the franchise, but Uncharted: The Lost Legacy for me is great. It has great visuals, a great story, crazy character modeling. I mean, the character model fidelity is just so good in these games. Naughty Dog knows how to make great characters, and the performances behind them are just fantastic. I really, really enjoy the story in these games, and this one is no exception to me. All the characters, all the performances were top-notch. It has a really fun story, keeps you entertained for the entire thing, and the visuals are just great. The game ran smooth to me, which is fantastic. I love it when games look great and run smooth. It has great sequel potential. I would be completely open to more stories with these characters. As I said last month, I'm more than happy for Nathan Drake never to be in a mainline title again, but these characters I think have fun potential for more stories. They just work really well together, and it'd just be cool to get more games in the Uncharted series with these guys. So yeah, these are the games that I've played this month. I've got a decent amount of them lined up for next month. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you, beautiful people, in the next video.